Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, and today we're going to be doing another gaming mouse showdown. This time it's going to be the M65 from Corsair against, very popular mouse, the Steelseries Sensei Pro Gaming Laser Mouse. So these are both, they can be used for a lot of things. The M65 is primarily a first-person shooter mouse because of some of the features it has, which we'll be discussing shortly. Where the Steelseries Sensei is more general purpose. You know, a lot of people use it for FPS games. A lot of people use it for like Dota 2 and League of Legends and games like that, and StarCraft. So. But that being said, I did test them in both first-person shooter games, specifically Payday 2, which I've been playing a lot of lately, and League of Legends, obviously, is another main game that I play. So first, let's start out with some of the key specs with these gaming mice. Now, the Corsair M65 comes with a 8200 DPI sensor, and this is a big upgrade over the previous model. So that's getting up there, that's decent. The Steelseries Sensei, on the other hand, comes with a pretty high 11400 DPI sensor. So the difference there is it's dots per inch. That's what DPI stands for. So it's basically how much information it can take in, would be a basic way of putting it, I guess. The polling rates are, you know, 1000 hertz on both, so that's probably about standard nowadays. So that's pretty good, 8 programmable buttons on each one. Yeah, I'd say the Steelseries has slightly easier programmable buttons in terms of their location. Again, we'll get to that a little bit later. Now, size-wise, so this is an interesting one. So, the Corsair M65 is coming in at 114 millimeters long, 83 millimeters wide, and 32 millimeters tall, where the Steelseries Sensei is coming in at 125 millimeters long, so 11 millimeters longer. 63 millimeters wide, so definitely not as fat as the Corsair, and 38 millimeters tall, so a little bit taller. But the weight is the big difference. So the Steelseries Sensei is coming in at 102 grams. That's about normal, normal-ish. The Corsair M65, on the other hand, comes in at 164 grams. Now this does have removable weights, and we will get to that soon. They both have braided cables, about 2 meters long, so that's definitely fine. And they both come with their own software. So the Corsair M65 comes with the Corsair controls panel. This is a bit more on the basic side, but it still works nicely. It's got everything you'd probably need. Whereas the Steelseries engine is a lot more advanced. You know, there's a lot more customizability with it in terms of setting everything up exactly how you want and things like that. So it's the software-wise, the Steelseries definitely wins already. The Steelseries engine is very, very good to use. Now, first thing first, looks. So these are both going for good looks in two different kind of ways. So let's start off with the Corsair. Now, the Corsair has a more, I'd say, sophisticated design, complicated design, I guess some would say. This one is black, although they come in, you know, gunmetal green and white as well. So it is really good looking. It's got a kind of like rubberized top on it. I don't actually think this is that rubberized. It still feels really plasticky to me. It's more grippy than the smooth surface of the Steelseries Sensei, but it's still not that grippy. The sides, on the other hand, are more abrasive, so they're definitely very grippy. There's blue lighting in the front of it, which does look good, and on the top where the mouse sensitivity controls are, which I will get to in a minute. and it has an aluminium body. Now this is what I think sets it apart. It looks really good. The aluminium body just looks fantastic. And I suppose it's where your taste lies. So if you want a more sophisticated looking gaming mouse that people go like, wow, that looks really cool, then the Corsair is probably the one for you in the looks department. Anyways. Now, the Steelseries Sensei, this one's in silver, although you can get it in a variety of colors, and the LEDs are customizable, which looks awesome. The base is really cool with the Steelseries logo, which lights up. It's a more simple design, I guess. Traditional would be another way I'd say. It's smooth on top. The sides are also smooth, so after using something like the Steelseries, the Sensei Raw rubberized edition, it definitely feels like a bit of a downgrade. I don't really like it as much, this really smooth feeling. It gives it a bit more of a cheap feeling to me, so I wasn't a big fan of that. But I mean, it is an ambidextrous design, which is probably why it's a lot more simple, whereas the M65 isn't. So if you're left-handed, then you know, the M65 is not probably going to be the mouse for you. Where this one will still do you just fine. And as I said, the customizable LEDs do look really cool with the variety of colors you can customize it all to be. Now, comfort. So this is probably one of the biggest things for most people, because you don't want a gaming mouse that makes your hands sore or feel tired after only a few hours of gaming. So once again, we'll go back and start off with the M65. So for normal use, and by normal I'm meaning like web browsing and just general computer use, not gaming, it's fine. It's better than fine. It's very ergonomic for my hands. I have quite large hands, remember, so it felt really good for me. It was very ergonomic, very easy to use, and it's very comfortable. My hands didn't get sore. Although it's definitely not the most comfortable mouse I've ever used, but it's definitely not bad. So I'd say this one gets sort of like a B or like a B+ in comfort for normal use. And of course it's very easy to grip too, as I mentioned just before. Now, when you're gaming, especially in a first-person shooter game like Payday, you'll probably want to be using the snipe button. So it's that red button you see on the side. Now what that does is decrease the sensitivity, so when you're using a sniper rifle or something like that, or you snap to zoom, you can hold this down and it will decrease the sensitivity. It usually brings it down, so I had it just set, the mouse set on the medium sensitivity, which was about 2000 DPI or around that amount, and when you press the snipe button it brings it down to about 400, so a big decrease in the sensitivity brings it down by, you know, about a quarter to about a quarter. And that helps a bit. It would take a long time to get used to though. A lot of people will already instinctively, when they go to snipe or snap to the scope or whatever, they'll slow down their movements already. So it can be, obviously not to overcompensate. So it would take a while to get used to. You know, I'd say if you were playing with this, playing first-person shooter games for a week or two, you'd definitely be used to it by then. However, it made my hand feel quite tired because you're having to push the side button quite and like hold it in, and it means your whole hand's kind of like more tensed. So it did make my hand feel tired in Payday, which I've never actually noticed before. So that, and the other point is that when you press it, sometimes it can, because it's on the side and you're pressing with your thumb, you can move the mouse, so it can be a little bit awkward to press it. However, if you didn't want to use it, this is another programmable button, so you could set it to something like grenade or something like that, something you're not going to be holding down or using that often, and then you could just set it to that. So overall, yeah, it's pretty good. Just the snipe button can wear out your hand a little bit, but if you got used to it, then it'll probably be okay. The Steelseries Sensei, on the other hand, is, yeah, it's because it's quite basic and not really as ergonomically designed, I suppose. Well, I mean, it still is, but it's just a more basic design. Then it's just fine. If you're used to just using your regular mouse, like a standard mouse that you can buy anywhere, then this one's not going to feel much different, so it'll be fine for most people. As I said, it's ambidextrous as well, so that's good. It's not very grippy, so that's one thing that can be a little bit annoying for some people. But yeah, both of these mouses do have rubberized grips on the mouse scroll wheel. So the Steelseries Sensei is just, comfort level would be on par with just your average mouse that you've probably already used at some point or another. So accuracy and sensitivity. So the Corsair M65 comes with kind of like a three-way adjustable sensitivity on the top of the mouse. I was a little bit suspect about it at first because me personally, I'm not going to be changing the sensitivity that often, so it's to put it in such kind of like a primary place is a little bit suspect. You know, like most people aren't going to be changing the sensitivity that often because you get used to a certain sensitivity and then you'll, you know, instinctively know, oh, I only have to move the mouse this much for this kind of action. And to have it there to be changed on the go so easily, it's kind of a bit strange to me because I'd just set the sensitivity to one sensitivity and then I'd probably never change it again unless I really needed to for some other reason. So a little bit strange having it there. It's a cool idea, but yeah, I only just left it on the medium setting. However, you can change this in the software, so you can just set it to whatever sensitivities you like if you want to jump it around. And the same with the snipe button, you can change the sensitivity there. As far as accuracy goes on the medium setting, it was just fine. I have absolutely no issues with it. It was good. It did everything I wanted, and you know, I can't complain. The sensor works just fine. Nothing bad with it. Didn't stand out to me for any particular reason, but it was great. It just did what it needed to do, and that was it. Now the Steelseries Sensei, on the other hand, the sensor is fantastic in it, and I think this is where the majority of the budget went when they were designing this gaming mouse. So the sensor's fantastic in it, and it's really accurate. It doesn't feel clumsy at all or anything like that, and the sensitivity and adjustability that you can adjust in the Steelseries engine is really, really good. Like all the axes and other things, you have so much adjustability that you could really set up exactly how you want. And that, as I said, is probably the main reason most people get to this gaming mouse, is just for that sensor, because it is so good. Between the two, I'd say it's definitely better, although you're going to have to be pretty, you know yourself pretty well, because there's a lot of kind of advanced adjustability that maybe your average user might not know what will do, or struggle with fine-tuning. Most people will just set a mouse to one of the preset amounts and that'll be just fine. In saying that, it does come with a lot of preset default profiles from pro gamers in all different types of games, from like Counter-Strike to League of Legends to StarCraft and things like that. So you can set it to one of those pro settings that have already been installed by default in the Steelseries engine for this mouse and go from there, in which case you would just need to try out a few different profiles and then see what suited your needs, which is one big thing it has over the Corsair, which doesn't have any preloaded profiles, although I'm sure you could find some if you really tried. Now, buttons and the scroll wheel. So, the M65 does a really good job of its button layout and, you know, the feel of the buttons and things like that. Nothing feels in the wrong place. As I said, the sensitivity adjusters on the top might be a little bit funny for some people, but you can change those to whatever you'd like them to do instead of adjust that, so that's fine. You could set it up for something else. The snipe button is obviously made for your thumb and kind of like an obvious place, but it, as I said, when you use it, sometimes it can push the mouse when you're using it and things like that, so maybe that would be, but I mean there's nowhere else you could really put it, and you don't hit it when you're just usually, you know, if you're just web browsing, stuff like that. If you hit it, all it's going to do is drop the sensitivity down, but you don't find yourself doing it that often. The clickiness of the buttons is fantastic. The main left and right mouse buttons are really good, and the side buttons, which you can use to go forward or back pages and internet browsing and other things, are really good. They're out of the way. You're not going to accidentally hit them. They're really slim. So that's really good as well. The scroll wheel is a bit more on the chunky side. It's quite large, and it's more on the stiffer side. So if you like something like that, then it'll be right down your alley. It's not as light as a lot of the other ones I've used, which might not like, some people might not like it. Although in saying that, most of the time you can get used to them pretty quick. After using it just for a few days or something like that, you'll be used to it. So it's not really something I would say that people shouldn't get for that reason. It's just a bit more on the stiff side. Now, the Steelseries Sensei. So the scroll wheel's more on the lighter side, as I just said. It's more like a standard stiffness. It's a lot more slim and small, so I don't know if that's really a benefit or a detriment. I'd say it's just a difference. I personally didn't really notice much difference between them. Maybe the Corsair one would be easy to click in gaming and stuff like that, but they're both, because it's larger, but yeah, it's just a different kind of approach. Now, the programmable buttons, like the ones on the side, they're a lot bigger, and the gap between where your finger rests and where the those side buttons are is a lot closer. If you see, the buttons on the Sensei are a lot bigger and a lot lower down. Now, this is one of the complaints I had with the Sensei, is that it is quite easy to actually hit them. If you got quite fat thumbs like I do, you'll see it actually covers the buttons, unless I held it way down the base, but then my thumb would be touching the mouse pad. So you can accidentally hit them. That's a problem I didn't have on the M65. So one thing, this is one thing I didn't like. The other thing I didn't like, and this was the main thing I didn't like about the Sensei, the primary buttons, the left and right click, were just too spongy. There's so much travel, and they just feel really spongy to use. You could probably get used to this, but just coming from all the other gaming mouses I've used, it felt so spongy. And although it's like in League of Legends with last hitting and stuff like that, it just made it feel more difficult than it should be. A lot more spongy than anyone would like it to be, and yeah, too much trouble. So a revision there would probably be good, in my personal opinion. Some people might like that, and yeah, well, more power to them, but personally I didn't. I thought they were way too spongy, and it was probably the worst thing about the mouse. Now, additional features. So, as I said previously, the M65 has removable weights in the bottom. Now these can be easily taken out, and the way they're staggered like this and sort of like a triangle means that you could take just one out, say the base one, and then you could leave the other ones in, and it wouldn't feel lopsided or anything like that. Now, it is still quite heavy, even with all the weights out, because it is an aluminium body, so it has got a bit of weight to it. But personally, I didn't think it was too heavy or anything like that, and I left it with all the weights in because I just thought it felt the best like that. It does tend to glide really well with all the weights out, and that's what it does really good. The slippy pads on the bottom are really good. So it was good in that sense, and it's another thing, it gives you more adjustability, so you can set up the weight exactly how you want it. There's no such thing with the Steelseries Sensei. There's no removable weight, so it's just the weight it comes with, which is a lot lighter than the M65. It doesn't really come with many other additional features. I suppose the default profiles that I just talked about would be one of them, but it's just more on the basic end mouse, and as I said, you can't remove the weights or anything like that, and yeah, so not really much aside from software wise that the Steelseries Sensei comes with in terms of additional features. So in conclusion, what do I say about the Corsair M65? It's incredibly well built. That's one's for sure. The aluminium body, everything. It feels really, really well built. It's got a good sensor, I'd say. Good. It'd be on par with most gaming mouses around this price point. It's good looking. I really like the aluminium look to it. It just looks fantastic. And the button placement's really nice. You don't accidentally hit anything, except those top buttons are a little bit funny, as I've mentioned a few times. The scroll wheel's decent, a bit on the heavier side. The snipe button would require a bit of getting used to, but once you got there you probably enjoy it, and it would be useful for some people. The mouse sensitivity buttons on top could be also changed to something else so that they would be more useful than their standard setting, unless you really do want sensitivity changing on the fly, in which case then they would be really useful for you. And the weight for some people might be a little bit on the heavy side. So the Sensei is a more basic type mouse. It's ambidextrous, which means that you can use it, or left-handed people can use it as well. It looks awesome in its own way, in a more simple way than the more sophisticated way of the M65. There's no weight adjustability though, and the buttons are quite spongy. The side buttons are a bit too close to your thumb, so you can accidentally hit it. And it just feels quite basic for the amount of money you're spending. However, the sensor is absolutely fantastic in it, and so is the software. So those are the two big redeeming factors with it. And of course the light adjustability with the LEDs to set up exactly how you want it is also a really cool feature to have. So, who wins this showdown? Well, I'm going to have to give it to the Corsair M65. It's just a better value for money. You get more for your buck with this. It comes in at generally a lower price point than the Steelseries Sensei. It is more inclined towards first-person shooter games, although using it in League of Legends and games like that, and Dota 2 and StarCraft would be just fine. I used it and it felt just fine in them, so it's not specifically just for first-person shooters, well, exclusively for them. It just feels more like a really good gaming mouse, more solid build. There's also more adjustability in terms of the weight. The only real things the Sensei has over it is a better sensor and more lights on it and better software, but that's not really the end of the world. And the buttons on top just feel fantastic, and that's what most people are going to notice straight away. Of course, the snipe button's a really nice feature to have, and just overall, it feels like a better mouse than the Sensei, and it's cheaper too, so it's obviously going to win just because it's just fully better value for money. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you liked this gaming mouse showdown. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time on Tech Showdown.